Hello everyone. In this series, we're going to build a to-do app using SwiftUI and Firebase. This series is aimed at people who already are familiar with the basics of Swift. Just the basics would be fine. We are going to dive deep into concepts of SwiftUI and Firebase. In this video, we are going to set up our Xcode project, our MVVM structure, and our Firebase. MVVM, things like these are not very familiar with you. That's fine. We're going to look over them. Let's start by creating our Xcode project and configuring our Firebase. Let's jump into Xcode. Create new project. We want to make sure that we are at iOS and we are creating an app. Name it whatever you want to. I'll name it TK to do app since TK, type Krish. Make sure the interface is SwiftUI. You want to make sure the language is Swift. The storage, don't worry about it. And test, we're not going to do with test right now. Click on next and save it wherever you want to. Okay, and we have a SwiftUI project. The first thing you want to do is to add the Firebase dependency. For that, we'll go to Firebase, the GitHub repository for Swift. We'll open a browser, Firebase, GitHub, Swift. Okay, so this is the SDK that we'll use to add the package dependency for Firebase. We'll copy the link, we'll go to our Xcode project, we'll say file, add package dependency, we'll enter our URL, and we'll get the Firebase dependency. Just install the latest one. Say add package. Now the first time you will install the Firebase dependency, it will take a lot of time. So just wait. Okay, so now we have a whole list of things that we can add from the Firebase dependency. We need primarily three things: the Firebase auth and the Firebase Firestore. Let's add those. Let's go to Firebase auth. Let's add it to our target, TK to do, and let's look for the Firestore. Yes. Now you want to add the Firebase Firestore and the Firebase Firestore Swift package. Let's add those. And we'll have a whole list of package dependencies loaded up. Let's hit Command B to make sure our project is still building.
The first time you might build an app, it will take some time.
Okay, so our project is building now. What we can do is now we can go to our Firebase console and make our project there. To do that, let's head over to our browser. Let's go to firebase.google.com. You want to log in with your Google ID. Now click go to console. We'll start a new project. We'll give it the same name as we did with our app, TK to do app. I named it that, right? Yes. Yes, we want the analytics, even though we might not use them for this app. Just press the default account and then we wait. Okay, so now we have a Firebase project loaded up. We are building an iOS app. So we'll go with iOS, Apple. We'll enter our Apple bundle ID. You will get that from your project com.krishmittal.tk.todo. In your case, it might be different. I'll just put that here, com.krishmittal.tk.todo app. I'll just double check to make sure it's exactly the same. No, might be small. You can leave the app nickname and app store ID by default. It won't matter. Now our app is set up. Now we need to download this plist file. We'll just click next. We have already added our Firebase SDK and we'll skip this installation code since we'll do it ourselves. We'll click next and we'll continue to the console. Now, we'll set up our Firebase auth and our Firebase data store by going to build authentication. Let's get started. Now, in the app, we want to provide multiple type of authentication to the user. We'll provide an email password, we'll provide an Google, and we'll provide an Apple login. Let's enable our email password, our Google login. Okay, add new provider, Google login, enable. Okay, yeah, we will need to reinstall our plist file, but that's fine, we'll do that. And we need to add our Apple login. Okay, apparently, if you add a Google login, you are also required to add an Apple login due to Apple guidelines. I'm not sure about it. I haven't tried not adding the Apple login and submitting to the App Store, but we'll deal with Apple and Google both. Okay, so we have our authentication enabled. Now for the database, we'll use a Firestore database here since we're dealing with text and documents. We'll click on create database. Just leave the location to default, it doesn't matter really. We'll start in test mode since we have no intention in releasing the app to the App Store.
And then we'll wait for it to be created.
Okay, so we have our database set up. Okay, so the one thing that I forgot recording in the last video is actually downloading a new plist file and initiating the Firebase in a project. We can do that by going into the iOS app in a Firebase console, going into settings and downloading the new plist file. Now, you can go into our Xcode, bring the plist file into it. You want to make sure copy items if needed is check marked and it's being added to the target. You simply do finish and we have a info plist file. Now, in the TK to do app, yours might be named something different. You want to initiate the Firebase. We'll do so by importing Firebase core and doing an init Firebase app dot configure, and now we'll build it to see if it still work. And it does. If your build has failed, that means there's something wrong with your plist file. Maybe the naming is not right, or maybe you have just not imported it correctly. But now we have a Firebase setup. Now, to set up the MVVM file structure in a project, we will basically need 4 folders for now. We'll need a views folder, press Command N. No, actually, do right shift, new group, do views. It will have the views of our app, new group, view models. It will contain the logic behind our views. We'll have another file structure called models. It will contain the models of our app, something like user or task. And we'll have the last structure called support. It will basically contain every file that doesn't fit into the other 3 folders for now. We can put our to-do app file and our Google plist file and our assets in the support, and we'll put our content view in the views file. We'll build it to see if it's still built. Okay, and we have no errors. I'll just rename the content view to main view. I kind of do that in every app. You don't really need to. We'll go refactor, rename, and I'll simply do main view. This will rename the content view everywhere where it's mentioned. Okay, so now basically there are 2 ways that you can go about in structuring your folders. You can have every file that you will ever need in your app now, or you can slowly create them and build on them. For this tutorial, we'll slowly build on I usually like to have every file in my app that I could think of first loaded up. Now that we have our Firebase setup and our folder structure setup, let's look at what our app will eventually look like. Yes, we'll have an authentication view, we'll have a sign up view, we'll have a login view, we'll have a Google Auth, we'll also have an Apple view. We'll have a task view in which you'll have two sections, the one that we have to do and then the one that we have done. We'll have a new task view. We can even delete the task. We'll have the calendar view and we'll have the profile view.